listening to She Rises, a podcast dedicated to women who are ready to stop settling and start living their lives by design. If you're ready to talk about the stuff that weighs you down and get practical advice on everything from your health, body image, spirituality, relationships, and personal growth, then you're in the right place. Hello, I'm Giovanna Capozza, your host, master coach, spiritual teacher, and mind-body expert, and I'm on a mission to unsettle women all over the world. Are you ready to rise? Hi guys, Giovanna here. Today's episode is called Why You're Not Healing. And I wanted to bring you guys this episode because when I started to sit back and look at everything I've done, everything I've studied, and the origins of all of it, what it really goes back to for me is this curiosity about illness, and not just illness in the body, but dis-ease overall, lack of harmony physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It's always been my calling. You know, when I look back, I can see the evidence of that going back well over 20 years now. I saw my first spiritual, let's say, healer or mentor. She later became my mentor when I was 19. And it introduced me to this whole other world and this whole other way of thinking and perceiving and looking at the nature of reality. See, before then, I very much thought that the world is how it is and things just happen and you are at the effect of those things. And really that's it. And you have to just kind of roll with the punches. You got to find your own solutions and you got to do it all. And while there are elements of that I think can be empowering and that I think are still true, that you are ultimately in control, there was really more of what I would call a victim consciousness that was pervasive in that thinking. Now, don't get me wrong. I didn't see my first spiritual mentor when I was 19 and heal that and have it completely poof and gone. In fact, I'm still a work in progress. But what really, really fascinated me initially was why I couldn't get over certain things, why there were certain things in my life, certain emotions that I couldn't get past, certain, events that happened in my life that I could not get past. Why was it that my body could not regulate its own body weight? I've shared really openly in other podcasts that I've had this ongoing battle with my body and my self-image in that way. And I remember at a really, really young age thinking there must be a solution to this. There must be a better way. There must be an answer. And I started digging for it. And, I started digging for it in all the, let's say traditional ways. I started really getting interested in the functioning of the body. What is happening in my body? What chemical reactions are going on? What is the food doing? How are different ways that I can take supplements or take other things? And eventually that fascination and that, desire and thirst to learn more about how the body worked brought me into studying functional nutrition. It brought me into studying botanical medicine and eventually homeopathic medicine, which is a vibrational medicine. And still all of the influence, let's say, from my earlier training of energetics and my spirituality, they were all kind of swirling around and coming into play, which is why I began to study and put my focus on vibrational medicine and vibrational healing. Because I understood that at the core of everything in our universe, at the core of everything in our body, all we are is energy. So that became my primary focus and fascination. And later I studied more about the mind and our belief systems. And I, began to learn about how our very thoughts actually produce our reality. I began to learn that your world is 100% governed by what is going on internally in your internal world, in your belief system. I started to understand that everybody has their own reality and we're each living in our own world. I used to joke around sometimes and I used to have people say, well, you're not the center of the universe, but actually in your perception, rather, you are the center of your universe because everything that you are perceiving and everything in life that you are experiencing is very, very unique to you. We have this analogy that's often used about, putting someone blindfolded in a room, putting a few people blindfolded in a room and asking them to describe the elephant or what they're touching. And you'll have them describe something totally different. You'll have them come to completely different conclusions. And that is based on our own perceptions, which are governed by our belief systems, which are shaped in large part from our early experiences in life and from the mere fact that sometimes, until something sufficient happens to wake us up, sometimes we're still asleep to the possibilities and to the true nature of reality. And so I wanted to call this particular episode Why We Don't Heal. Because I still, at the root of, like I said, of everything that I do and the coaching that I do now, what I still see is we are not healing different areas of our lives because we're not fully understanding the nature of dis-ease. And in fact, I work with a lot of women in particular who find themselves, they wake up one day and they realize, I've gone after this, I've accomplished that, and I still feel like I'm settling. I still am lacking fulfillment in my life. I'm still sort of going through the motions every day. And that in itself, while it's not, a diagnosed disease, let's say, through conventional medicine or the conventional mindset, it is dis-ease in your life. And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what is the nature of health. From a homeopathic perspective, health is the ability to go in and out of dis-ease or disharmony with ease. It is the ability to have experiences in your life and go in and out of them. So that's the key point. Can you have the flexibility of your vitality, of your internal governing system, your life force, as we would call it in homeopathy, or vital life force? Is that healthy enough to have you go in and out of experiences with ease and flexibility? Or are you getting stuck in those experiences? And that is the true definition of health. The true definition of health is the ability to go in and out of experiences or in and out of illness or disharmony and be able to bounce back with ease. So it's interesting because when I first learned that definition, it blew my mind because we, in our conventional thinking, will think, well, no, dis-ease or getting sick, that is being unhealthy. And if you're unhealthy, that means you're sick. But what I started to learn was that you could have no physical symptoms whatsoever. You could never get a cold. You can say, oh, I don't get a cold ever, and I never get the flu. And you could be, by conventional standards, never sick and physically healthy. And yet you can still be sick. And this is why we don't heal, because we're not looking past the body. We're not looking past the seeming reality of what's in front of us as the illness or the disharmonic thing happening. Could be disharmony in your relationships, could be disharmony in your business. But if we are only looking at health and healing from the perspective of the human body, and am I physically sick, we're really missing the boat on what true healing is. We're really missing the boat on what is possible for us. So the definition of true health and healing is the ability, or I should say the level of aliveness and vitality that you feel in your life. I'm going to say that again. True health is the level of vitality or aliveness that you're experiencing in your daily life. Now think about that, because if you are perfectly, air quotes, perfectly healthy, and you are, doing the 9 to 5 and you're working in your corporate job or even in your business, if you're an entrepreneur, and you're unhappy, you're not physically sick, there's nothing wrong with you physically, but you're unhappy, you're unfulfilled, you don't feel a level of peace, you don't really feel like you're flowing through your existence, you don't experience joy on a daily basis, I would say that you're sick. It's not conventionally sick, but your life is sick because you're not experiencing a level of vitality and aliveness. And so these are all symptoms. So I've always been fascinated by symptoms. In fact, when I first started learning symptomatology, I loved it. I have this very inquisitive Sherlock Holmes kind of mind, and I loved following the breadcrumbs with my clients and my patients and finding out, well, what does this all mean? If we take all these symptoms together, what is this saying about your physical system or your life system? And so I want to invite you to take a look at the symptoms of your life and what's going on. It could be that this lack of vitality and this, let's say, sickness that is on an energetic level or an emotional level, it could be that it's already manifested on the physical plane, meaning you already have an illness or you already have something that is bothering you physically. It could be anything. It could be anything from a hangnail to, unfortunately, full-out disease. So maybe it's already manifested that way, and maybe it hasn't. See, once it manifests physically, there's a gift in that, because that is the body system that is coming in to, give you a really big signal. It's the blue light special on aisle 10. It's blinking, a flashing light saying, hey, look here, something's not right. But we don't want to wait till it gets to that level, right? We don't want to wait till it gets to the physical level and manifests in the physical body. We want to be awake to the symptoms of our life and what is not fitting right, what is going wrong, where are we getting triggered? And those are the symptoms. So I want to invite you to look at the symptoms of your life. Are you getting really easily triggered emotionally? Are you experiencing a lot of road rage? Are you getting triggered by people at work and you can't let it go? Are you getting triggered by your clients or your spouse or your partner or your friends or your family? Are there areas of your life where you're getting so triggered and you can't let it go? That is a major symptom. And I want to invite you to look at that, not from a place of judgment and not from a place of, oh my God, something's wrong here and really freak out about it, but from a place always of curiosity. This is interesting. Something is sick here. Something is wrong. There is dis-ease in my life in this area. Most illness, and I'm coming from an alternative medicine background, so I'm going to go out on a wire here and say all illness, because this is my belief. Okay? You don't have to believe it. This is my belief. All illness, everything that manifests in this physical plane started from a mental, emotional area of stuckness or dis-ease that wasn't addressed. And it's now come into the physical plane. Now, we don't create these things because we are masochists and we wake up and say, I'd like to create cancer today. No, that's not how it happens. So this isn't about self-blame, but this is about being curious of interesting. There's something going on here that I haven't addressed. Even it's become really common thinking now when someone who's a workaholic gets run down, they get a cold or they get the flu. I hear it more and more with my clients, the languaging of oh, well, I guess I wasn't taking a break and my body is forcing me to. And we think, haha, but actually that's exactly what's happening. It's not just that your body's forcing you to take a break. It's actually that you have been ignoring the call of your soul or your inner spirit, or in homeopathy, we call it your vital force. You've been ignoring that thing that's been saying something's stuck here. Something's not right. And if we ignore it long enough, it manifests in the body. So health and healing, it's not just about the physical body. I want you to look big picture. And so the invitation, look at the symptoms of your life. And big ones are going to be these emotional blocks that I mentioned, these places where, as one of my teachers would call it, we hold baggage, right? We get a trigger. We're emotionally charged by something, and it's disproportionate. Okay, that's the key. It's disproportionate than a normal, let's say, run-of-the-mill reaction that doesn't have a charge behind it. And I'll give you an example. Somebody, cuts you off while you're driving, and you're having a good day and you're feeling pretty good that day, right? So they cut you off and you might say something like, oh, well, okay, come on in. And you slough it off and it's not a big deal. What happens when that same incident happens when you've had a bad day, when something's gone wrong with the kids or something's gone wrong at work, or you got a bill in the mail and you're like, oh my God, I got to pay this bill. And you're stressed and that same thing happens. What happens? How do you react? I'm not pausing for effect because I know what's coming up in your mind because it's the same thing that happens to me. We freak out. We swear. That guy's a jerk. He can't drive. We get a disproportionate reaction. We let that get under our skin, right? That is how you see a symptom. Now, in that moment, when that happens, are you really upset about the driver? No, you're upset or you're in fear, rather, about the circumstances that are going on in your life. Now, we're not taught the emotional intelligence required to pick up these signs and symptoms. We're not taught that. And what I'm inviting you to do here by looking at the symptoms of your life is to start to see these little places that need healing, that need help. And this is where doing some really deep inner work, some release work, some healing of a different kind, of a non-physical kind, is actually going to prevent you potentially, not always, but potentially, from manifesting something physical in your body or manifesting something in your life that becomes a huge blow up, right? And that could look like anything from a relationship blowout to losing your job to all kinds of different things. So I want to repeat again what healing is, what true healing is. True healing, or true health rather, is the level of your aliveness and the level of your vitality in all areas of your life, in your finances, in your work, your career, your family, your relationships, your spiritual world, and yes, your physical world as well. So that is the measure that I want you to start assessing your symptoms through. Am I healthy in these areas? Let me do a health check in all these areas of my life. And do I have health here in my friendships, in my community, in all the places that create a life? Give yourself a health assessment. What is the level of vitality and aliveness that you feel in those areas? And again, not from a place of judgment, but from a place of curiosity. And then once you know that, you can start to create a roadmap of where you can start to focus your attention and your inner work to start to feel alive and vital in those areas. So that's the first thing I wanted to bring to you guys. And the second part, it's a natural lead-in, because when I get to this piece with people, with my clients, with people that I teach, the thought is, well, okay, great. I can see these areas. I know where I'm not healthy. I know where I'm, not feeling vitality and aliveness in my life. But I'm scared to change it. I'm scared to even admit it, because if I admit it, that means something's got to change. And that's really scary. It's scary with relationships. It's scary with jobs. It's scary with our family. It's scary in all these areas, because once we acknowledge I'm not happy here, or I don't have a level of aliveness here, we got to do something about it, right? We could sweep it back under the rug and pretend we don't see it. In fact, most of us do that to a degree until it gets so bad we can't not look at it. And oftentimes we try and fix the external manifestation before we address what's happening inside. Now, what does that mean? Well, you're starting to feel really stressed out. You feel really unfulfilled in your marriage or your relationship. And the first place we go to is, oh, well, I must change my partner then. Either change them, like literally have them change their personality, or I have to change them, meaning I got to find a new partner, right? Same thing happens with work. You start to become really frustrated at work. You start to become really triggered by people. It starts to feel unfulfilling. Well, the first thought we have is, well, it must be the external thing, and therefore that's the thing I need to change. And maybe it is. Maybe it is with the partner. Maybe it is with the work, but you won't have that answer until you don't have a charge anymore. So what does that mean? Let's use the example of relationships. So you think, well, it has to be the partner that has to change. He's getting on my nerves, or she's getting on my nerves, or she's not, I'm not attracted enough anymore, or whatever's going on. And the immediate thought, as I said, was the external thing has to change. Well, here's the thing. If you don't address what's going on inside and you change the external thing, whatever it is going on inside that created that situation to begin with, you will just recreate with someone new. And this is where we get people who are just living their life in the recycle bin. They're just recycling and recycling and recycling. We do this with jobs. We do this with friends. Like I said, we do it in our relationships. We do it with financial situations. We do it in every area of our life. We just keep recycling the same lessons because we're trying to fix the external thing without fixing the internal reality. I'll give you a really personal example. I lost 70 pounds. Those of you that have snooped around on my website and heard me speak about it or read my blogs have read that. And those of you that haven't, now you know. I lost 70 pounds, a huge amount of weight. I had been overweight pretty well my entire adult life, lost 70 pounds, totally transformed my life, got back into a situation years later after keeping it off, got back into a situation that re-triggered some old wounding, that re-triggered some areas that were really, really tough that I never healed. Okay, that's really important, that I never healed the first time. And I ended up putting on 15 pounds. Let's say 15 to 20. Which I'm endeavoring now to still release. And yet I know, because I do this work with myself and with my clients, I know that until I release the internal thing going on, not only will I not lose the weight, but even if I do, it'll just pop back on. And so it's really, really important as we're looking at our life and as we're taking this assessment and we're looking at the symptoms that we don't just look at the external symptom and say, all right, let's do away with that. Because you will just continue recreating the situation until you get the lesson. This is an earth school, for those of you that don't have that belief, I invite you to just stay open a little bit. And if you're really stuck on it, no problem. There's actually a great book by Eckhart Tolle called A New Earth. It's great. I recommend it to a lot of people whose, concept of this is kind of new, and it really breaks it down and explains it really well. And I love that book for that reason. But I do believe that this is an earth school. We're here to learn. We're actually here to remember the truth of who we are, which is not these physical bodies. We all hear that saying, and I totally forget who it's attributed to, so I apologize, which is you're not a human being having a spiritual experience. You are a spiritual being having a human experience. Well, this is all part of it. So why aren't you healing? You're not healing because you may not be looking at what the true dysfunction or the true dis-ease is in your life. You may not be healing because of either an unawareness or a reluctancy to look at those places. And I know, guys, I know that it's scary sometimes. Trust me, I know. But there can be a reluctancy of actually looking at, I don't feel alive here. I don't feel fulfilled here. I don't feel on fire in this area of my life. And of course, I don't want to set unrealistic expectations either, because you may have different areas of your life be up and down at different times. And this isn't about painting this utopian ideal experience, because life is about polarities, right? It's about sometimes experiencing good and bad. This reality we're in is a polarized reality. There's night and day, light and dark. And there's always room to assess what's going on. Is there something physical that's off? Because guaranteed, if it's already arrived on the physical plane, there's some sort of mental, emotional block that's either produced that or it's contributing to that. Is it in your life, in your areas of your life where the dis-ease is? Is it that you are working a job and you just every day dreaming about starting your own business or traveling more? Maybe it's in your relationship. And the invitation here is, after you take the symptoms of all these different areas of your life, is to then go inside. And this is where radical responsibility comes into play. Because if we continue to blame the external, and like I said, we try and change the external, then we're constantly living at the effect of the world instead of being at cause. Being at cause means you're taking 100% responsibility for everything that you've created in your world. And that's a tough one. And I'm going to probably end up doing another episode just based on that. But radical responsibility is coming out of victim consciousness, where it's everything is happening to me, and starting to understand and look at the world from an everything is happening for me perspective. When we do that, when we can shift into that mindset, that is when we are truly empowered. That is when we are truly living and learning and eventually thriving. So that's the podcast for today. I'm going to pop in from time to time and do these shorter half-hour sessions to help support you along the journey, and to also support between guests, and give you some more information and to teach more a little bit from my heart and what I love. And I also want to invite you to think about potentially where these areas are in your life and where you really want to focus on making this shift. And if this is something that you want to dive in deeper to, if this is something that you feel, you know what, this really resonated with me. This message resonates with what's going on in my life. This message resonates with the type of empowered living that I want to have. Then I want to invite you to have a conversation. There's an upcoming program that I'm putting together that is just for you. It's just for you at this point in your life who are waking up and deciding that the way I've always done it is not going to work for me anymore. That what got you this far is not going to get you the next step of the way or the next phase of your life, that you don't want to continue making the same mistakes or living the same recycled experiences. I'm creating a program that's just for you. And I want to invite you to a conversation, because if this really appealed to you, if this episode really struck a chord, I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to find out a little more, which will also help me to create this program. It'll help me to have the research required to create this program. And there might be an opportunity where perhaps you're ready to take it to the next level and maybe do some one-on-one work together. And I'd love to have that conversation as well. So if that is appealing to you, if your antenna and your spidey senses have gone up, if this message has really resonated with you and you want to know more, I invite you to email me at info@giovannacapozza.com, and we can set up a time to talk and dive a little bit deeper into this. Or we can just set up a time to talk so that I can research a little more about creating this program for you and really make it substantive. Because my passion, I hope you can hear, is to create programs and teachings that will really help you be healthy in all levels of your life, mind, body, and spirit. And that's my joy and my passion and what I feel is part of my mission here. So thank you for listening. Stay tuned for next week when we'll have another amazing episode for you and possibly another amazing guest or a teaching just like this. And if you want to know more, you can visit me at sherisespodcast.com, which will also take you to giovannacapozza.com. And if you do want to email me, again, the email address is info@giovannacapozza.com. You'll also be able to contact me through the website and the contact page, and we'll have all of this information in the show notes. I hope you enjoyed the show today, and I hope you be gentle and easy on yourself with this process and looking at your life, taking your symptoms, and assessing where it is that you might want more health, more vitality, and most of all, more aliveness. God bless. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week on another episode. Thank you so much for tuning in, and keep rising, everyone. For books and resources related to today's episode, make sure you head over to sherisespodcast.com, and I'll see you there. If you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure you tune back in next week when I dive into more juicy topics to help make your life the best it can be. And hey, if you've enjoyed listening to the show and you love it, head on over to iTunes and leave me a rate and review and subscribe there to the show.